Training Camp Live. I'm Olivia Landis, joined by Ethan Greenberg and Eric Allen. And you're probably wondering why we are in such close quarters. Due to a little bit of weather mishap outside, we are now inside the field house, right, guys?
Yeah, I mean, quite honestly, about 20 minutes before practice started, the lightning alarm went off, and it was a fire drill to get inside, and now we're shoulder to shoulder.
It wasn't exactly a fire drill, but I've never felt closer to both of you than I do right now. This is something else. We are tucked away literally in the corner here on the second floor of the field house.
I don't know about you guys, but this is the first day of, yesterday was report day. This is the first day that we see the players on the field, and it's kind of crazy to believe that it's already here, training camp.
It feels like a while to me, but at the same time, it feels super fast. And the last time the Jets were on the field was barely 2018. It was January 1st or just about that. And now pads aren't on yet. Pads come on Sunday, but for now it's more along the same of minicamp and OTAs. But nonetheless, this is a very exciting time for the NFL and especially for Jets fans, because you've seen this vision that Mike Maccagnan and Todd Bowles have come to fruition in the past 3 years, and this is now really when it starts to take form. And I think that a lot of people around the league agree that this is a very exciting time if you're a Jets fan.
So we're able to breathe a little bit right now. I think fans at home are taking a look at some special teams action. This is Todd Bowles' fourth training camp as head coach of the New York Jets. Of course, he got his start in the National Football League as an assistant coach way back in 2000. But Bowles, I do agree with you, Greens. This is a better roster than last year after a number of off-season additions, but we don't want to bury the lead here at camp. Olivia, as you both know, and everybody at home has been asking about, is that one Jet who isn't here as the Jets kickoff training camp is Sam Darnold.
Yeah, like you said, EA, a lot of people have been asking questions about Sam Darnold, and the truth of the matter is we don't have any answers right now.
Well, no news to report.
No news to report,
yeah,
correct.
because as the Jets always do with any contract is, listen, they're going to keep those things in-house as we watch Todd Bowles right now look over his special teams units. This is Brant Boyer's group out there on the field, but Todd Bowles, fourth season with the Jets, and he had his first team meeting with the guys last night. That's kind of the introduction to training camp. And then this morning they get to work. And like you mentioned, Greens, the pads won't come on for Bowles' group until Sunday afternoon out here in Florham Park. Right now, Saturday and Sunday are, I believe, open to the public here at the Atlantic Health Jets Training Center.
Well, something that Olivia said too is just to give fans an inside look is yesterday is report day. So what happens on report day is basically that the players have a physical and a conditioning test that they go through. They make sure everyone's okay. And on that note, talk about conditions, physical conditions, just some players that have their helmets today. And we'll see if they practice today, but for stretch, Terrell Pryor, that's a big name that has his helmet. Marcus May, Jordan Jenkins, Quincy Enunwa also has his helmet today. So health-wise, I think the Jets are in a good spot right now. But EA, you talked about the big story that Sam Darnold's not here. It's been widely reported that the holdup is offset language and just to
maybe perhaps
something else,
perhaps signing bonus as far as how that's dealt with over the course of a contract. But the Jets are never going to negotiate in the media, so they'll keep working at that, and they want him here, and Sam Darnold wants to be here too. That's
exactly what I was going to say. If you know anything about Sam Darnold, he wants to play football. He's all ball. And Olivia, you talked to him right after he was selected in April, the third overall selection, and I think it was even apparent then. He's like, yeah, this is exciting, but when can I lace him up?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, understandably from the fan standpoint, it's kind of, I can understand why people are concerned, but like you said, it is literally the first day of training camp. There's plenty of time. Things are obviously going to get going, but something we had to look forward to now, you mentioned it before, you were talking about Coach Todd Bowles, and one quarterback, obviously that isn't here, Sam Darnold, but something Coach Bowles did mention before is how deep his quarterback roster is. I think he said that to you, EA, when you were interviewing him at one time. We do, as you can see on the screen, we have Teddy Bridgewater and Josh McCown warming up here. Can we just talk first about where each quarterback is at in their career and how different it is to have these guys on the depth chart.
Well, the thing that struck with me here early in this training camp practice is Josh McCown, the aforementioned Josh McCown, got everybody together. They clapped it up. He brought everybody in. Team huddle, team breakdown. Guys coming off a career year. Jeremy Bates, the offensive coordinator, who is also this team's quarterbacks coach, is overlooking both McCown and Bridgewater right now as they go through the paces here early in individual drills. But McCown's 39 years old. He looks like he's about 25, tremendous shape, knows the offense inside and out, and a lot of people credited him not only for his leadership last year, but also him taking his play to the next level in his 15th season. Teddy Bridgewater, Greens, you can talk about him a little bit. Fascinating story because a former first-round pick. He's just 25 years old, had that devastating knee injury a couple years ago. He had a really good spring for the New York Jets.
And not only that, but Teddy is someone that I think is someone that's very popular in the national spotlight because of his injury. And everyone loves an underdog story and a comeback story. And not that Teddy's an underdog, but he's someone that suffered a non-contact injury in, I believe it was late training camp or the preseason, missed the entirety of 2016. Yep. And then, of course, the Vikings signed Case Keenum, and he goes bananas last season. And now Teddy's a part of the Jets. And just based on his spring, he looked like he was fully healthy. He was running around. There was a lot of rollouts, a lot of play action, passes for Teddy. And I'm excited to see what he can do, especially when the pads come on. I think that this Jets room, the quarterback's room with McCown, Teddy, and Sam Darnold is one that is very unique and it's very uncommon throughout the NFL. I think, honestly, the only other team that has a similar dynamic might be the Ravens with Joe Flacco, RG3, and Lamar Jackson. And I think that it's a room that all three guys very much understand they're here to win the job, but all three guys at the same time want to support each other. And in one Jets drive, you saw Sam Darnold say, we're all here to compete, but at the same time, whatever happens, happens. It's not in our control to figure out who's going to be the starter. That's on Coach Bowles, and we'll see what happens come the end of training camp.
I think we got an ISO shot here on a receiver who you mentioned before, Derek Greens, and that's Terrell Pryor, of course, a free agent addition in the offseason. He'll be able to battle against his former teammates this training camp, Olivia, because the Jets are going to break up this training camp about in the middle. They'll go down to Richmond, Virginia, and have 3 days of practices with the Redskins, and Pryor might see some action against his former team, and then that week will conclude when the Jets and the Redskins do battle on Thursday night. That's their second preseason game.
Yeah, definitely Terrell Pryor. It's good to see him in a helmet, like you said, Ethan. But something that is interesting, not only with Terrell Pryor, is the wide receiver group as a whole. Yesterday, we were able to speak to Jermaine Kearse and talking about adding Terrell Pryor into the wide receiver mix, as well as Quincy Enunwa. So that in itself, that position, and of course you have Robbie Anderson returning, coming off of a season-high career. It's going to be interesting to see the dynamic inside that wide receiver room with so much competition going on, especially if you have players like Quincy and Terrell Pryor healthy.
Well, Pryor, what stands out to me when you just take a look at him out here on the practice field is he's a big dude. He is a giant guy. We'll talk about Trumaine Johnson a little bit later because he is also a guy with a lot of mass. But Pryor, interesting size, speed combination. Like I said, 2 years ago with the Cleveland Browns, he had more than 1,000 yards receiving, Greens, and he was wearing a boot for most of the spring, so it's encouraging to see him out here, and I'm sure he wants to do as much as he can in training camp. But the Jets, with all their players coming off injuries, are going to take the proper approach under head medical trainer John Meldy.
Well, one thing that I think is very interesting about this Jets receiving room is that you have four guys that have had 800 or more yards in a season. One of the guys right there.
You took that from Quincy Enunwa. That's that.
I did. And there he is on your screen right now. And, you know, the addition of Quincy is going to be a big one because he broke out in 2016. Last year in the green and white scrimmage, he went down with a neck injury and missed the entirety of last season. And then it's funny how things work out, right? Jermaine Kearse is then acquired right before the regular season, and then that second-round pick that the Jets acquired ended up being a part of the trade for the Jets to go from 6 to 3, and then eventually take Sam Darnold. But just back on the receivers for a minute.
How about Robbie Anderson catching those one-handers, huh?
Well, double ones. What do you expect?
He
only needs one hand.
Speaking of ones, one of our articles on the website, our question series was, will 11 go for 1,000 yards this year? Of course, Robbie Anderson in the 900 range last year. Greens, I think that he is poised for a big season. And as you can see right there, his hands are like Velcro.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting. And just one guy not to sleep on because he had a good mini camp is Chad Hansen. And it'll be interesting to see what happens when pads come on, because then the corners can jam him a little bit. And Jermaine Kearse and Trumaine Johnson on the screen right now. But it's going to be a fantastic camp, I think. And Jermaine is one of those guys that came in and had a career year last year. And truly what he did was, I think, underappreciated coming here in the week leading up to the opening matchup in Buffalo week 1. And he had a tremendous year for what you consider it. And when you're going up against guys like Trumaine Johnson and Morris Claiborne and the guys on the Jets defense day in and day out, I think it'll only help. And I know it's a term that's often used as iron sharpens iron, but I'm excited to see what happens between these two groups, because they're going to face up against each other every day. And then, like you said, EA, go to Washington, face Josh Norman a little bit, and then, well, who knows what'll happen. So I'm really excited. Simply put, I'm really excited to see what happens. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah, Olivia, you got a chance to speak to Jermaine yesterday. Here's the big ticket item going up for a pick here as he gets loosened up, and that's Trumaine Johnson.
Yeah, Trumaine Johnson, one of the biggest additions in free agency for the Jets. You were talking about earlier, Coach Todd Bowles heading into his 4th season. He's got to kind of learn, how to combat this new team that he has, because there were a lot of pieces added in free agency, and Trumaine Johnson was one of the biggest pieces. A lot of people are excited about. Huge cornerback. He's going to probably be that number 1 cornerback, and then you're going to see Morris Claiborne as the number 2. That's going to be some intense competition on the outside, and I think it's something adding to that Jets secondary, New Jack City, as we were talking about, that should have people really excited.
Well, Trumaine Johnson, Greens, there are a couple things that I like. That he is a young veteran. He's still in the peak of his NFL career. And the other thing is, you're speaking about a guy who tasted losing as the Rams, and they came up together. And that's one thing we were talking about. Now the Rams are considered one of the better teams in the National Football League. They made the playoffs last year. And when he was asked about the Jets, he said, hey, listen, this does have the potential. This team does have the potential to be a playoff team, Greens.
I think so, and that Rams secondary was very talented, but when you look at who the Jets have with Marcus May, Jamal Adams, Trumaine Johnson, Morris Claiborne, and then EA's guy Buster Screen playing the nickel, I think that this is one of the better secondaries in the NFL, and there's so much that can happen between the start of training camp and the start of the regular season. But if all pans out and the players progress like they should, like one of the guys is Marcus May, who you're seeing go through some individual drills, is when he didn't practice because of an ankle injury in minicamp, both Coach Bowles and Denard Wilson both said that when he comes back, they expect him to be a sharper player mentally because he's in his books more. He was very vocal on the sidelines, cheering everyone on during OTAs and minicamp, and he worked out. He said that it didn't really hinder his progress because the injury didn't hinder his progress. Let me clarify, because he was able to work out a decent amount, and when you're studying the books and you're learning route combinations and you're understanding it better, you're going to be more active on the field. And I think that the Jets coaching staff and everyone included expects Marcus May and Jamal Adams to take big steps in their second year.
I thought it was fascinating what Bowles said about May. He said that he might benefit from not practicing because sometimes you see the game a little bit differently from the sideline, talking with Denard Wilson. Both of those guys in May and Jamal Adams, you're speaking about two guys poised to make a jump in their sophomore seasons because Olivia, they're going to see the game better. The bottom line is, from that experience, they're going to see the game better. They're going to know our offenses are attacking them a little bit differently, a better understanding of the defense, and they're going to play faster. Jets fans are awfully excited about this team, and two of the big reasons why are those two guys. And speaking of safeties, Todd Bowles, of course, a former safety in the National Football League who won a championship ring with the Washington Redskins, 8 seasons in the NFL, 4th here with the Jets, watching practice as the rain falls down here on the roof inside the field house.
I hear it. I think something that's really interesting yesterday, as we all know, was report day. We heard a lot of guys talk: Steve McClendon, Tremaine Johnson, Leonard Williams, Jermaine Kearse, the list goes on. We heard some guys talk, and a common theme that we seem to have heard yesterday when listening to all those guys was talking about what they need to do to make those close games wins. Yeah. And I think Todd Bowles has talked about this a lot. Leonard Williams really said it best when he said, it just comes down to the basics and fundamental football, closing out those games. So, as we sit here and we take a look at some of the guys practicing and some of these guys like Leonard Williams, who is now in his 4th year, these veteran presences, I think that's going to be really interesting to see how Todd Bowles approaches that this training camp and approaches these guys on that mentality of fundamental football.
Couple themes. Finishing, Kearse said that. Situational football, Tremaine Johnson said that. They brought up different elements of the game that, the difference between winning and losing in the National Football League is such a fine line. And you have to do good things as far as winning in the red zone, winning in the turnover margin, knowing down in distance, time, and everything like that. Because for the Jets to make the next step, it's all going to be about focus and consistency.
Well, I think you saw last year both sides of the coin, because there were some games last year that the Jets were competitive in and ended up winning, like the Chiefs game, the Bills, and then there were some games that were real close and within grasp for the Jets to take, and unfortunately didn't go their way. When you think about the Falcons game in the rain at MetLife and then the Panthers game at MetLife. And I think this year, when you look at this defense in particular, this is a talented team, and they're very, very young. Only 3 players on the roster right now, 30 or over. And when you see the guys jogging on the field, those 2 guys in front, Marcus May and Jamal Adams, those are really the franchise cornerstones from last year. And I know Marcus May was a second-round pick last year, but almost everyone in the organization views him as a first-round pick because of the season he had, the impact he had. And for 2 rookies to just go out there on a team and perform the way they did, I think is also overlooked, because those guys did a very talented job last year, even though maybe their stats weren't to prove in the eye of the nation yet. We'll see what happens.
You just saw Morris Claiborne on the screen, too. That goes under the radar a little bit that Mo Claiborne is back here with the green and white, because, yes, you added Tremaine Johnson, but you got Claiborne back, and Claiborne thought his 2017 season with the Jets was his best professional season. So he's back into the mix. And we talked about the safety here. The safety position here. I think it's the deepest on the team. It's going to be, because we can go beyond Adams and May, and we can talk about the J.J. Wilcoxes of the world. We can talk about Doug Middleton. Terrence Brooks. Yeah, there's going to be some fighting for some roster spots. And a guy we didn't mention was Rontez Miles, and Rontez Miles starts camp out on the PUP list. Another announcement here, defensive end Courtney Upshaw is on the active NFI list here to start training camp. We were just looking at Darren Lee before. He's another guy who's got to make a big jump in his 3rd professional season, because he's going to be taking on new responsibilities, Olivia. He's that defensive play caller now. He's going to be the quarterback out there.
Yeah, the linebacker position, we just wrote a piece on this actually on the website. It's a very interesting position because, like you said, Darren Lee is going to be taking over the microphone and play calling on the defensive end with the absence of Demario Davis in free agency. And he's heading into his 3rd season this year. He's had the ability to really grasp the playbook. And someone that's going to be his partner in crime is newly added linebacker Avery Williamson. Now, obviously, he hasn't been with the Jets only but this season, but it's going to be interesting to see how those 2 really combine and are able to take over that play calling position on the defensive end of things.
Avery Williamson, Green's a tackling machine. That relationship in the middle, seems like those guys are developing really nicely together, Lee and Williamson.
I think so too, because when you speak to both of them, or rather, Avery Williamson said that when he first signed here, Darren Lee was one of the first guys to reach out to him, and Avery said it feels kind of weird because he's the older one, but the new one in the defense, and I think Darren Lee is really embracing this role of taking more responsibility as the play caller for this defense in most packages. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out, and I think that Avery Williamson is he and Demario Davis are similar in the fact that they're both tackling machines. They run stuff.
Younger.
And he's a younger, many comparisons as a younger Demario Davis. But one thing that EA said that I just want to touch on is you talked about the safety depth. I think that the depth throughout the roster, top to bottom, 1 to 90, is very, very deep. It's going to be very competitive as training camp goes on. Because even when you look at the linebackers, sure, the Jets lost Julian Stanford and Bruce Carter. Then they had Kevin Minter, Kevin Pierre-Louis, Neville Hewitt. I think that there's going to be a lot of interesting position battles, maybe not at the front, but at the back end of things. And you could really go to point to any position and get excited about the depth at the position and who's going to make the team and who's not. And I think that that's something that maybe we haven't seen in years past. And again, this is just more of the same where it's very exciting if you're a Jets fan right now.
Absolutely. And, you mentioned some of the outside linebackers. And again, we talked about that in one of our pieces. And a person that was kind of quiet in the spring he was limited because of a shoulder injury. But Jordan Jenkins has been a staple on the outside for the linebacker group. And I think his role is going to be extremely important this year, heading into his third season as well. He's had some more time to be able to learn the playbook, and he has more of a veteran presence now. So I think that's going to be really important for Jordan to step up on the outside. But there's definitely still some competition considering the outside linebackers. You have Dylan Donahue, you have Lorenzo Malden coming back. Yep. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Well, I'll tell you what, we got competition for space out here. And I guess our time has been cut short, but we've enjoyed it. We've made the most of our room. I hope everybody at home enjoyed it, and we're going to be live throughout training camp with some look-ins, so we're pumped about it. Maybe we'll get a little bit more breathing room next time around.
I heard that the weather's supposed to be better in the next couple of days, so hopefully we'll be outside. But that wraps up day one of Jets 360 live training camp. We'll be back here tomorrow. Hopefully we'll have some more live shows for you guys soon, and hopefully we'll be outside with better weather. But for Eric Allen, Ethan Greenberg, that's going to wrap up for us today. I'm Olivia Landis.